Hello, welcome to the James Cooley Show. It's your life. I'm your host, Dr. James J.C. Cooley. Wow, we got an absolutely fantastic show coming your way today. We got this absolutely fantastic guest that's going to talk to us. I'm not going to give it away because Michelle will beat me up, but we're going to talk a little bit about advanced mental health treatments and all other things that goes along with that. And so I am so excited about that because, May is still uh, physical fitness, mental health, and all of these things combined. So we still talking about that subject. And this guest right here, I tell you, uh, me and Michelle did our research, and she is really going to enhance our knowledge on a lot of things that are going on. So I tell you what, if you want to be part of the show, all you have to do is just go to the platform that you're watching us on, ask any questions that you might have. I promise you, we'll get you an answer. How you doing, Dr. Cooley? How you doing today?
I'm doing great. I was actually having a conversation with our guest today before we went live, and she's got some support here. I mean, we got two of her colleagues in the back, but they're there for moral support, and we will bring them on if they choose to come on. But this is a very important topic. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and as you know, mental health is a serious issue, not just within the United States, just globally. And we definitely want the audience to get educated about the different ways that mental health can be dealt with. And this guest is going to show us another way, especially when it comes to clinical trials. So we're definitely interested in bringing her on.
Well, I see that she got two supporters there. They want to pop in, but we'll get them on as well. So, Michelle, I want you to introduce the title of the show, purpose of the show, and introduce this absolutely fantastic guest.
Oh, most definitely. So the title of today's show is Understanding the Role of Clinical Trials in Advancing Mental Health Treatments. And we're having a sit-down conversation with Dr. Diana Shuster. She's a PhD. She has the Vice President of Clinical Sciences at CenExel. She's going to discuss how clinical trials are shaping the future of mental health, misconceptions about clinical trials in mental health, and innovative approaches being tested in current mental health clinical trials. So again, Dr. Diana Shuster, she's Vice President of Clinical Sciences at CenExel, bringing over a decade of expertise in translational and early phase central nervous system research. Her role encompasses the design and execution of first-in-human proof of concept and diverse phase 1 clinical pharmacology studies. With a background spanning big pharma, CROs, and tech bio, Dr. Shuster has significantly contributed to advancing rare diseases compounds. In her capacity as VP, she's dedicated to integrating her multifaceted expertise to ensure consistency and quality across global research sites. Actively engaged in strategic planning, she specializes in designing translational research programs and navigating the critical path to regulatory approval. Driven by a commitment to de-risking early phase drug development, she employs innovative strategies, including continuous CSF sampling. Please welcome to the show. She's going to tell us more about her. Please, Dr. Diana Shuster.
Hi there. So nice to meet you.
How you doing, Doc? It's an absolute pleasure having you on, especially during May at this time because it is Mental Health Awareness Month. So Doc, can you first tell our viewers and our listeners a little bit more about you, where you grew up, what makes you click, and why you're so passionate about what you do?
Sure. So I am from Ohio originally, but have lived all over. I ended up doing graduate school at the University of Washington in Seattle, studied how drugs are metabolized during pregnancy, which led to really understanding how you need to dose a drug throughout, in each trimester of pregnancy, how much drug crosses the placenta, things like that. And I really got into that because I was a biochem major, and my favorite topics in chemistry, physics, and biology were sort of all merged into one in this discipline of clinical pharmacology. And I guess I should back up. If you don't if you don't know what clinical pharmacology is, it's really when you read a drug label, and you see how you should take a drug, whether it's with food or if you're elderly or if you have kidney disease or something like that. Clinical pharmacology, we're responsible for figuring that out. What dose will be safe and will work in this disease if you have any of these extra things going on as well. So we really provide the ammunition for doctors to know what to give and how much to give. Wow. You can tell I like it just by talking about it.
Yeah, I can tell you love what you do. So Dr. Diana, what inspired you to pursue this profession? I mean, was it something that you always wanted to do, or something just came across your way and you said, okay, I can do this and I want to do this? Can you tell our viewers a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, man, that could be a show in and of itself, I feel like. I mean, for the sake of, it'll get a little spiritual. I don't mean to necessarily go there because, everybody has their own opinions on faith. But I was interested in so many different things I could have done: journalism, architecture. I'm a learner for life, forever student. But I mean, in fairness, I actually prayed about what I should study and major in. And when I went to where I ultimately went to undergrad for my biochem degree, I looked at a list of college classes you could sit on, and they had a human biology class, and I just felt drawn to it. And I sat in on the class, and they were talking about neurons and how they worked. And I was just, edge of my chair, hanging on the professor's every word. And I thought, okay, maybe I should lean into this. So I thought, well, surely I'll do a biology and maybe marketing degree. I'll do pharmaceutical sales or something like that. But then I took an organic chemistry class and fell in love with organic chemistry, ditched the marketing degree, and ended up going into biochemistry. And then when I finished undergrad and went to grad school, or was deciding where to go to grad school, I worked for a year in the pharmaceutical industry. And I heard the conversations that were happening for my manager and the folks with graduate degrees in the room. And it was this beautiful conversation of, a physician that's treating patients saying, they have heart failure, they have this unmet need. And then drug manufacturing would pipe up and say, clinical pharmacology, what dose do we need to put into a tablet for these heart failure patients? And clinical pharmacology would say 200 milligrams. And then manufacturing would say, well, we can only fit 100 milligrams into a tablet. They'll have to take it, 2 times a day. And then the physician would say, heart failure patients will never take this 2 times a day. And you just see this interplay of all these overlapping but distinct disciplines finding a way to work together to get the right care to the patients. And I wanted to be at that table. I wanted to be a part of that problem solving and that conversation. And that's how I got there.
Wow. That's interesting. Let's change the topic just a little bit. Can you tell our audience a little bit about CenExel, however you pronounce that?
CenExel, yeah. Yeah, so CenExel is a network of clinical trial sites. So this is probably something a lot of people aren't familiar with, but just drug development, how this works in general, is often pharmaceutical companies or biotech companies will actually outsource clinical trials to be run by, separate run clinical trial sites like CenExel. So there's 18 sites that we have, physicians, nurses, staff, et cetera, all across the US, Southern California, New Jersey, Atlanta, Florida, Salt Lake City, DC, Colorado, et cetera. And each of our sites sort of has a secret sauce, a specialty niche, patient population they're great at working with or recruiting, complex assessments that they're equipped and outfitted to do, things like that. Centers of excellence, if you will. And what happens is pharma companies will essentially ship drug to our clinical trial sites, and then we are responsible for recruiting the patients to participate, dosing them, monitoring them for safety, collecting any samples, and then that data is analyzed and shared, in return with the pharmaceutical company for them to decide, where to take the drug further in development. And perhaps the unique thing about CenExel is that we have so many clinicians that are experts in schizophrenia or major depressive disorder, things like that. that we often partner with pharma companies to help them design the best type of trial and interpret the results so that, because we have the most access to the patient population. We're seeing them day in, day out, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So how long have you all been in doing these clinical trials?
CenExel, I'm laughing because I started at CenExel at the end of January, so this feels a bit like a quiz. CenExel has acquired more than one site over time. So the most recent acquisition of sites, I believe, happened in 2022. They've been around for a while, though. It's just been the slow upbringing up to the 18 sites that we have, but have been around for a while. Good question.
You know what? We got to take a station break. And we're going to take a station break. If you want to be part of this conversation, all you have to do is go to the platform that you're watching us on, ask any question that you might have. I promise you, we'll get you an answer. It's your life. And we'll see you shortly after the break.
Heaven Abounds in You takes you on an inward journey of discovery that dramatically transforms your outward experience of life. Discover the power of belief. Utilize it in connection with science to create a vision of meaning and purpose that pulls you forward. Let go of the meager me to discover the magnificent me. Let go of your painful past and live life free from fear, worry, and stagnation. Experience an abundant universe as you powerfully create happiness, relationships, health, and limitless opportunities. When you heal your mind, all things are possible.
Really get a chance to know who you are. And once you know who you are, you truly know who you are, love who you are. Love who you are. You're a masterpiece. Love who you are. Love who you were born to be. Love me some me. That's what I'm talking about. When you leave high school, you gotta know today or tomorrow, or hopefully today, what your plans are. Hopefully, there is no bad decision unless there is no plan. Create, collaborate, commit with confidence. Commit with what? Commit with what? In everything that you do. Hello, welcome back to the James Cooley Show. It's your life, and my absolutely fantastic guest here educating us on a lot of things, and we're getting ready to dive deeper into some of the things that she does, her and her company, and just some more insight on all of these clinical trials and certain type of drugs and how beneficial it could be for all of us. But most importantly, we have to get a better understanding so we would know what we're doing. So Doc, I want to pick it back up, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Cooley. What is the mission statement for Senexcel?
This is actually kind of neat. I was talking with our CEO, Stuart Goldblatt, about this, and he just joined the company last July and actually got no management, just staff all in a room and asked them to write the mission and the vision statement, which I thought was pretty neat. I think a lot of pharma companies or any companies in this space, their vision is always something to the effect of, we want to improve patients' lives. And similarly for CenExel, we want to improve the landscape of global human health. Where research networks or site networks come into this picture, though, is being able to deliver exceptional, high quality data that's reliable and that's accurate, so that you can make a decision about whether or not to move the drug forward in development. So our mission is really to change the quality of lives for patients, but by conducting clinical research with excellence.
Wow, I like that. It's a very detailed mission statement, but I do like the goal of that. So let's talk about the clinical trials. It's such a big topic. So can you just educate our audience about the extensive research involved in getting these clinical trials up to speed, and how does it start? Like what do you do as far as helping, people who are going through mental health issues, and how does this actually help them?
Yeah, so rein me in if you need to. Okay, I'll start, but feel free to redirect me. I mean, before we even talk about going into clinical trials with humans, you need to know that there's a whole battery of work done preclinically, is what we would call it, before you're even approved by the FDA to start doing clinical research in human subjects. So there will be research, petri dish experiments trying to evaluate aspects of the safety of the drug, maybe in cell lines, or the efficacy of the drug in a cellular based system. There will also be animal studies that are validated models of a given disease or mental health condition or disorder, where you have to show that the drug works and what the right dosing might be. There's also a breadth of toxicity studies that have to be done in more than one animal species. And you really ramp up the dose as high as you can to look for any possible safety or side effects that you might end up seeing in the human population. So even before you start going into humans, you've done as much homework as you possibly can about your drug to know what concentrations you might need to reach in the blood to have a therapeutic effect, and what concentrations could be toxic. Once you have that established, usually the first study you're doing is a phase 1, first in human study in oftentimes a healthy volunteer population. These are usually studies, we call them single ascending dose or multiple ascending dose, but you're giving single doses of the drug, and if it looks okay, you're taking the dose up, taking it up, taking it up. And even still, all of the doses you've picked are magnitudes of order lower than what you've dosed in animals, to ensure that you're not exposing humans to anything that is unlikely to be safe. During those phase 1 types of studies, human participants are often kept in the clinic and monitored 24/7 by medical staff. They're regularly having their vital signs assessed, EKGs done, to monitor the effects on the heart. They're routinely being asked, how are you feeling? Is anything coming up for you? If there are symptoms, there's usually provisions in the protocol to administer medications, ibuprofen, something for nausea, things like that. So phase 1 is often your healthy volunteer space, and you get a sense of the initial safety, and then from there you move into your phase 2 studies, where you're characterizing in the patient population you really hope to treat what seems to work the best. So you may test a couple of doses. And then based on that data and conversations with the FDA, you move into a large phase 3 trial, where this is the patient population you want to get approval. You want it in the drug label, and you've really honed in on the dose that you think will work based on that phase 2 design. So this is where you get the full breadth of evidence to then take to the FDA for approval. I see someone submitted a question that said what approaches would help increase the race and age diversity in clinical research. This is a huge initiative right now by the FDA. A lot of our clinical trial sites are in very diverse geographic locations: Southern California, New Jersey, Atlanta, Florida, and we actually have databases of patients, and based on working with, a given pharma company, we can filter through that database and identify individuals that cover more of a diverse population to ensure, right, that males and females and Black and white and all these different ethnicities and races are covered in the clinical trials, so that we have a better handle on the side effects, the efficacy, et cetera, across a more real world population once it's on the market.
Wow. So Dr. Shuster, so you mentioned the different states where you have the studies, the clinical trials. Is the goal for the company to let's say, have as many states as possible? And I guess that's a loaded question, but I just want to add on something else. How do you find these patients who want to go and be part of the clinical trials? Like, how does the company find them? And also, I know I'm just going all these questions, so let's just focus on that one first, because I have another one after that. How does the company find these people who want to be part of the clinical trials?
Yes, so some of it is, like, a good example that came up for me recently was a study in opioid use disorder. And I actually, right, because I'm involved in the science and the design, but I'm not necessarily at the clinic on the ground interacting with these patients, which some of our principal investigators, like Dr. Elon Cohen, this is who I was talking to about this, they actually have a relationship with detox centers in the neighborhood where they let them know, hey, we have this trial coming up for opioid use disorder, and they maintain contact for those trials so that when people are leaving the detox center, they actually could come and be informed on the study design and make a choice about whether they'd like to participate. So sometimes it's relationships with centers or clinics, things like that, relationship with hospitals, relationship with folks in academia that are also doing, research in the field, but have a practice and are treating patients. So a lot of it is around creating a partnership just so that those folks are aware of the work that's being done so that they can refer patients. Patients could also go to clinicaltrials.gov and search, right, what trials are being done right now, what are currently recruiting, and there's opportunities, right, to contact and get involved or see if they're eligible to participate. And then, of course, you can go to our website and, as a participant, look and see the trials that are currently enrolling. If it's near where you're located, then you could seek that way as well.
Is there certain types of mental health disorders that the clinical trial is focused on? Because there's so many different types of mental health disorders. So is there like a specific group or type of disorders that you're focusing on? Because like I said, there's just so many out there.
Right. I would say no, we literally do it all. We focus broadly on CNS, but that is even parsed out between psychiatry indications like major depressive disorder or treatment-resistant depression, schizophrenia, acute schizophrenia, cognitive impairment associated schizophrenia, bipolar, all sorts of things. And then you can also go into more strictly neurology indications like Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease with agitation, lots of other ones that are more neurology and functioning, rather than the psychiatry side of things. But that's kind of what's I have found to be special about CenExel, is that different sites have actually built, before they were, acquired and brought into the CenExel network, they already were exceptional at running certain types of studies in some of these hard to find or hard to treat patient populations. And so they already had access to that as they became part of CenExel. So across all the sites, we cover basically everything. I see someone wrote in, what does CNS stand for? Good question.
Yes.
Central nervous system. Sorry.
Thank you. And then we have another question from Dr. Ballin. Besides identifying those potential participants, how do you address their fears or concerns given this country's history problematic research approaches with people of color?
Yeah, fair question, great question. A lot of this to me comes down to the informed consent process as well as the IRB. So if you're not familiar, the IRB is Institutional Review Board, and any clinical trial that's being done at a clinical research site requires approval by a separate entity, this IRB, that also includes, it often includes experts or physicians, and they're reviewing the clinical study protocol to make sure that it is fair, it's safe, it's ethical, you're not putting too much of a burden on these participants or putting them in an unsafe situation. But the IRB also includes on their board just a layperson who doesn't have, a research background or experience in that, to make sure that in their reading of the protocol, they also would feel comfortable with participants, joining a study like that. So there is different layers of oversight that unfortunately through mistakes and errors, now we have those things in place to do things better. So that's one thing. And then I think the other thing is the informed consent process. That process is where a participant, someone that is considering joining the study, is sort of tested on their understanding of the protocol, and any questions they have, any fears they have, that is when you're discussing it with the staff, with the psychiatrist, with the clinician on site. And so hopefully that should be a very intimate conversation where before they agree to volunteer, they are fully aware of what they're signing up for.
Wow. So what are some of the misconceptions that are out there as relate to these clinical trials? I know it's a lot.
Well, I'm chuckling because I before this, I actually was brainstorming with several of the physicians and principal investigators we have at our sites, Dr. David Walling, Dr. Elon Cohen, Dr. Tom Shovitz. When you are talking with patients, what do you feel like is a barrier? What blocks them from agreeing to participate? Hands down, the biggest one that they mentioned every time was participants being afraid that they were going to be a guinea pig, in these studies, that there was no real benefit, but they were going to be exploited or taken advantage of. And I think some of those examples, in past, get a lot of publicity, but the truth is participants are treated with the utmost respect, because it's really a partnership between the participant and the site. If they don't take their medication, take the study drug as they're supposed to, if they don't show up for assessments, then we don't generate quality data and we don't get treatments, later to the patients that desperately need it. So they must be treated with care and respect, and safety is literally paramount in these studies. So some of the care and the monitoring that they receive is actually better than the care they would receive if they were trying to make an appointment with their psychiatrist or with their doctor, where they could get in the next day with someone from our site while they're participating in a study, but it might take them a month to get in to see their psychiatrist when they're having a problem.
Wow. This is so interesting. But we're gonna take a station break. But when we come back, we're gonna pick this up, and we're gonna have Dr. Valen Durer is gonna come on, and she's gonna ask a couple of questions as well. So I tell you what, I hope you're enjoying this and getting all of this knowledge that Dr. Shuster is putting out, and I want you to be part of the conversation. All you have to do is go to the platform that you're watching us on, ask any question that you might have. I promise you we'll get you an answer. It's your life, and we'll see you shortly after the break.
I never wanna leave. Yeah, I'm right where I wanna be. It's something you and me, and I can't get rid of this feeling. Just like a magnet, we're just like a magnet. The things we have can't be taken for granted. Now I know that it has always been you. I can't help it, I'm so drawn to you. Just like a magnet, we're just like a magnet. The things we have can't be taken for granted. Now I
Noah Dingley here, producer of The James Cooley Show, It's Your Life. And the new audio version of James' book, Country Boy, City Boy, A Journey That Ain't Over Yet, is a must-have. James shares his true life story of struggle and success in America. It's both a cautionary tale and a roadmap to achieving the American dream. Get the new audio version of Country Boy, City Boy, A Journey That Ain't Over Yet by James Cooley on Amazon.com or wherever audiobooks are sold.
Hello, welcome back to James Cooley Show, It's Your Life. And Dr. Diana Shuster is really educating us and learning a whole lot about clinical trials and how they go about selecting certain type of drugs and people to participate in these trials. It's interesting. And it's important, I believe, that we all know about these things. And I want to pick it up from there. I know we talked about some of the misconceptions about that, but could you discuss the process of how clinical trials are becoming more integral into mental health care and why they might be considered earlier in the treatment plan?
Sure. Yeah, I think the truth is that we'd actually like to be much more integrated with caregivers and providers. But I would say our sites are very in touch with the needs, the treatment needs for some of these patients. We work, as I said, closely with the detox centers. We actually have staff go into neighborhoods and hand out flyers about potential studies going on. And these are neighborhoods where, certain mental illnesses are more prevalent or use disorders are more prevalent. There's patient advocacy groups we work with, hospitals, et cetera, to educate, these folks and potentially patients what might be available to them. The truth is that clinical trials, right, we haven't established yet if the drug actually works. That's the purpose of the clinical trial. But there are certainly patient populations where the side effects of the treatments that are available are just awful still. And the treatments take a while to take effect. A lot of depression treatments take 4 to 6 weeks to really kick in. So there's an initiative, right, to develop drugs that have treatment of the same disorder, but with a better safety profile, fewer side effects, or it takes effect much faster, so you're not in agony until the drug is kicked in. So I think we've really worked on building that relationship with the providers and with the centers to get the word out. So and sometimes, as I mentioned, for those people that really aren't experiencing great benefit from the current treatment they're on, whether it's because of the side effects or because they're resistant to the treatment, that's oftentimes when clinical trials might be introduced earlier into their treatment plan. But it's certainly never the first place that they go for treatment, I would say.
From your experience, how would I put this? What are some of the innovative approaches being tested in current mental health clinical trials?
This is a fun one, and it's a big one. So again, I'm going to try real hard to rein it in. So, in my past life of all the companies I have worked at, I've touched, heart failure, kidney disease, oncology or cancer, all of these other indications. And in some ways, those disease areas are a lot easier because it's all numbers based. You take a measurement and you say, yep, your number went up or your number went down. Your disease is clearly getting better with drug on board. But in mental health clinical trials, often you're relying on a psychologist to ask a series of questions, sometimes hours long, to rate a given participant on a scale for their depression or their schizophrenia and how severe it is. And that's quantitative, but it's not the same as an objective measure, right? That just says, yes, no, the drug is working. So there's been huge advances really in the biomarker space for mental health development to put some numbers around whether the drug's working. Some of those are doing functional MRIs with drug on board, before and after, to see if parts of the brain are changing as far as their activity with drug on board, and correlating that with these scales that psychologists use to rate the severity of their condition. There's also EEGs, which is measuring electrical activity of the brain and seeing how the brain responds to certain tests or stimulus. That could be visual or auditory. You hear a sound and how quickly can you see the activity in your brain react to that sound, and you can see whether that reaction time changes with drug on board. So there's all these innovative ways to determine if the drug is working. I could talk about a lot of those. There's also, though, novel approaches now in the field as far as the mechanism of action and the pharmacology of a drug. So they're developing psychedelics to treat PTSD. I know that's a taboo topic for sure, right? But the data is quite compelling, actually, for the improvement that these people can see in their treatment. There's rapid acting treatments now being developed with a really fast onset for depression and anxiety, where you aren't waiting weeks for the therapy to kick in. So some new pathways and things like that happening for these different indications. Another thing that's been really interesting, this is the last thing I'll touch on, you can cut me off, is they're also applying AI to some of these. They're not subjective, but to some of these rating scales. So when psychologists are interviewing and rating a given subject, they will use AI to analyze how long it takes the person to respond and patterns in their speech. And so some of this technology is a little bit newer, but it's being used to predict who might actually respond to treatment. So they'll conduct a study, and then after the fact or post hoc analysis, look and say, it seems like people with this speech pattern may tend to respond to this type of drug, or these folks might not. And then that could be a way that you kind of tailor treatment in the future. And same with the, EEGs looking at brain activity, or the fMRI looking at functional activity. It kind of lets you know of these subpopulations of patients that have a better chance of experiencing improvement on this drug. And so that's also kind of a newer approach that's been happening over the last several years that's really exciting.
Wow.
I'll stop. I could say more. I'll stop.
No. This is interesting. So I was just thinking about this. What are the criteria, eligibility criteria for participants that you all are looking for to be a part of some of these clinical trials?
Yeah, great question. I would say it depends on a couple of things. It depends on the phase of drug development that you're in. So, in the healthy volunteer population, first time you're ever going into humans, that criteria that allows you in is obviously a bit different than once you get into the patient population. But some of the very typical, most basic things addressed in a protocol would be, age limits. You have to be 18 to 65 or something like that. For example, there can be limits on your body mass index or body weight, essentially. Sex, if you can be male or female, like it's very common, right? You have to think about for women, are they on contraception or not? Could they participate in the study, right? Because are there any risks, right, if they were to get pregnant while they're on this treatment? So there's usually criteria around what contraception use is allowed for females to be able to participate if they're of childbearing potential. There'll be criteria around whether they have anything in their medical history that in line with the known safety of the drug, if that could possibly conflict or cause additional concerns. Obviously, concomitant medications or any stable medications they might be taking before they enter the study. Substance use, like can they take marijuana still? Can they drink coffee still? So the stringency of the criteria depends on the population that you're in, the phase of development that you're in. But that is why our sites and our principal investigators work very closely with the pharma companies, because it's easy to say, this is the list that we want, and we can say there are no patients that fit that list. In the real world, the patients actually look like this. And so it's kind of a compromise of finding, right, a group that mimics the real world and will still be safe.
Wow. This is, again, fascinating. We're going to take a station break. But when we come back, we're going to introduce Dr. Valen A. Durr. She had been asking me a couple of questions, and she is a child psychiatrist. And I'm sure she got a couple of questions for you as well. So I'll tell you what, whichever platform that you're watching this on, if you want to be part of the conversation, all you have to do is just go to the comments. Ask any question that you might have. I promise you, we'll get you an answer. Yes, your life, and we'll see you shortly after the break.
I've seen a smile convey I love you. I'm proud of who you are, and one that keeps us close when we're apart. Walking from the darkness of all that we've been through, it seems that there might be a way to leave behind the loneliness we've known and live again life of
James J.C. Cooley from the United States of America, and I am here to just say, first of all, I'm so happy and honored to be in the Coffee Book 2023, Unified Brain Z and the other organizations. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to be a part of this collection. Hello, welcome back to It's Your Life. Yeah, I'm just like having fun here, just learning a whole lot. We got Dr. Diana Shuster educating us on clinical trials and a lot of other things that goes into making sure that they get the right, first of all, clinical trials and identify the right folks to participate in these trials. So, and got Dr. Ballin A. Deer here that's going to be asking some questions this time. And I tell you, this is Dr. Ballin, this has been a very interesting conversation. What are your thoughts?
Well, hello, Dr. Schuster.
Hi there.
It's nice. It's nice to meet you here on the platform. As James said, I'm a board certified child adolescent psychiatrist and also obviously general psychiatry. And my concerns, of course, having been in practice for over 20 years, almost 25 now at this point, is one, as a woman that's African American descent, and also one who takes care of children. I had asked the questions of you earlier because it's challenging to get African American people and children in clinical trials. Children, of course, it's because the parents are concerned. I don't want people experimenting on my kids. And then the other one with African Americans is we have this long, unfortunate history with the medical community about being experimented on, even things being done to us publicly, of being mistreated before crowds by the medical community. So my thoughts are about how do we get out ahead of this? Because of course I heard your answers earlier about what you're doing once people, come to seek participating in the clinical trials. But what do we do to change mindsets to, ahead of time, so that their perception of how they'll be treated by the medical community and in clinical trials changes so that they're more inclined to enroll. And again, that's for people of color and for children.
Yeah, I think some of that is happening. Certainly, we're not at all where we need to be. But from my conversations with the folks at the sites, for example, we have a couple of sites in Atlanta with Dr. Kimball Johnson. And my experience in pediatrics at other companies was actually very similar to what you're describing. I had been in multiple conversations on behalf of companies with the FDA where they would ask us to do some of these assessments that we felt were too invasive, but understood, FDA was pushing for it for the scientific value that it added. And we had physicians saying, in my children that I see, it's just not realistic. You're never going to be able to collect that. You can't do that. But then I came to CenExel, and some of our sites in Atlanta actually specialize in pediatric studies, and they've done special things at their site to make the experience catered toward pediatrics, where they actually want to come and the parents feel that their child's being well cared for and safe, and it's not scary. The assessments that are happening, they'll bring in different activities and games and things like that, where it's almost like a fun experience, and they're excited to come, and they understand how their participation is incredible and actually vital to expanding an indication of a drug and getting the dose right in a younger population of subjects. So that was actually surprising to me too, having just joined this company at the end of January, because that had been my experience other places. But it seems like in some areas that's actually changed, and I think it's a lot about the environment that the sites create to make it inviting and make it different. One of our other sites in Southern California, they only typically do studies with adults, but they have nurses on the staff that actually come in and home cook meals when folks are staying overnight, and they all sit and have dinner together, which is seems funny, kind of unheard of, but it creates this familial environment and sort of a level of intimacy and care that you wouldn't expect within clinical research. And I think those similar things are happening with at least the pediatric population. I don't know if that feels like it's at least getting a little bit to your question and what you're asking. As far as
So let me just interject this a little bit, which is, so when you look at children's hospitals, they're designed exactly the way that you spoke about.
Right.
So it's not like this is new information in terms of you create an environment that's conducive and comfortable for, in this case, when we say the patient population, in this case for children, right?
Right.
Things are colorful, they're fun, they're engaging, they're hands-on, they're at their height, so those are things that are just commonly known. So I get that, but again, it's how do you get them in, right? And so so I'm interested again to hear what you were going to say as it relates to African Americans and Latinx folks and just and Asian people. How do we turn this around so that they're more comfortable in engaging with the medical community and particularly with clinical trials?
Right. So I have a partial answer, but like secretly, I'd actually love to talk more with the clinics about this to see what they're doing in their region to address something like this. It's interesting because I've actually toured several of our sites and gotten to speak with and see participants. And I actually saw more African Americans present and participating in the studies. So your question is actually in conflict with what I've observed at our sites so far. But my off the cuff opinion is that we have really good relationship with the treatment centers or the practitioners that are treating, these patient populations and doing our best to really educate them on what's available. And some of these hospitals have actually opened up, their own research arms, et cetera. So when they're caring for a patient, it's an immediate extension of the office, and the care is that they're also involved in research, et cetera. So in my opinion, it's sort of the partnership with the hospitals, with the practitioners, with people that are seeing these patients so that they're educated about what could be available to them. And then it's also back to that informed consent process. Once they do find out about it, being able to have a conversation where you really confirm that they understand what's to be expected, what will be done, et cetera. But I'd actually love to follow up after the show with an even stronger answer to that question.
You said you would love to follow up with whom? I'm sorry.
Follow up after the show with a stronger answer to that question.
Okay.
So I tell you, we're down to the last couple of minutes of the show. Dr. Diana, if we have some folks that want to reach out and get in touch with you or employ your services, how could they reach you?
Yes, you could certainly go to CenExcel's website, CenExel.com. You can also feel free to email me if you would like, d.shuster@CenExel.com. But yeah, happy to have any conversations or answer any questions.
Wow, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and certainly I'll have to revisit this again one day. So I want to thank you and your team. And Krista, of course, always for always referring to us, absolutely fantastic guests. So thank you so much. I'd like to thank Dr. Dira for coming on, asking questions, and always being that wealth of knowledge. I'd like to thank Dr. Michelle Cooley for putting together another absolutely fantastic show. But most importantly, I'd like to thank our viewers and our listeners for tuning in to the James Cooley Show, Monday through Friday, 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, live, and also on Sunday, syndicated on the radio, KCBQ AM 1170 The Answer. So I'd like to always leave you with this thought. I think we need to always dream big, think big, and be big at everything that we do. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. It's your life, and we'll see you then.